So I shall start. Hi, Yaliwe. Thank you so much for joining us today. And I'm Aman from Team Zubi. This interview will be majorly focusing about your journey. So, Yaliwe, welcome on the show. So, why don't you tell us about yourself, what you are doing, and how you have moved towards your journey towards blockchain?
Hi, man. Yeah, thanks for having me. So I'm all right, thank you. And it's been actually an overwhelming journey, to be honest. It's been a journey that has been full of ups and downs, with a lot of positives and learning in between. So yeah, it has been quite overwhelming. But I'm glad that I've started this journey and there's no stopping now.
So tell us about some of the difficulties you have faced in your journey. So how you have came across blockchain, because coming from Africa and is an emerging technology. So of course, the initial bit would have been through cryptocurrencies. So how you have came across this technology, which is changing the world, and what has been some of the difficulties which you have faced?
Okay, so initially I came across blockchain, not blockchain, let me just go back to cryptocurrency. I came across cryptocurrency way back in 2016. So I was working for more of a multi-level marketing online platform. I was a consultant there, and they used to pay us in Bitcoin. So because of that, we were also asked to create a number of tutorials, right? So I started creating tutorials, and that actually sparked curiosity in me. Though in 2016, I did not take it too seriously. Then down the line in 2017, an organization approached me and they asked if I could help build more of a curriculum on blockchain and cryptocurrencies. And I started to do a lot of research in that area. So the whole lot of 2017, I did a lot of research and I developed a curriculum which I was calling a learner guide at that point. And the document is like 117 pages. And with that curriculum, I started a meetup group called Johannesburg Women in Blockchain. So every month on a Saturday, I would meet up with the ladies for coffee and we would discuss the technology and the possibilities of the technology. And down the line, I started getting speaking engagements, local speaking engagements. But funny enough, it was for companies that are trying to come and have like conferences in Africa. And they'll actually, they don't want to be here. So they'll ask you if you could speak. And so that also made me learn more on the technology. Yeah. And speaking of the difficulties, firstly, being a woman, I think there's been a lot of trust issues, right? So it's first and foremost, or first appearance, people often think you don't know what you're talking about. So I experienced some of that. And I always give this example of I went to a conference where I was speaking and somebody looked at me and said, "Oh, so you're one of our speakers?" And I was like, "Yes. Are you nervous?" I was like, "No, I'm not." And this guy literally said, "I'm nervous for you, you see." So there've been a lot of trust issues, and also there's been a lack of support. So if you're not very strong in the industry, or you don't really know what you want, or you don't have passion for the industry, there is no way you can carry on. So there's been a lot of self-sacrifice and a lot of self-investment in order for you to move forward, or for me to move forward in this industry.
Interesting. So, what is the one thing which which you think really excites you about this technology, blockchain, apart from the crypto volatility?
I think the crypto doesn't even excite me. It's actually very funny that I don't even hold a Bitcoin or any other cryptocurrencies. I use them, but it doesn't really excite me. I love the usability, but what excites me is the technology itself, the underlying technology and the possibilities for Africa. So when I came across the blockchain, I looked at a lot of inefficiencies that we have in the current systems on the continent. The first thing was the voting system, very porous. The identity system, very, very porous. And we had this whole, I would say, the financial systems. There's a lot of exclusion, and also I would say there's a lot of corruption. There's no transparency. So I looked at the possibilities, and this is something I wanted to be part of because it was going to make a change and it was going to make an impact on the continent.
So, you talked about the use cases and also the identity and some of the use
Mhm.
cases which were there as a part of the voting. So why don't you talk about, or why don't you share some of the use cases which you have seen being implemented in Africa, and you were the part of it as directly or indirectly?
Okay, so I can't specifically say I've been part of use cases. I think what I've spent my time on mostly was learning and also trying to educate more people, because people are not even aware they need this technology, to be honest. So it's
I agree.
very hard for us to see use cases. So there has to be a lot of awareness. So what I've been part of is the education and also trying to create awareness, and also trying to create, you see, people like to identify with people who are like them, right? People need their own heroes. So I've tried to be that person so that I can spark a curiosity in people to come and say, hey, we've seen you doing this. How do we become part of it? And I think that has been really incredible, because people are forthcoming now. So we'll see a lot of use cases, but I doubt. Also, yeah, there've been some, well, especially on the crypto aspect of things. I mean, there've been a lot of exchanges. I think South Africa is one of the biggest frontier for cryptocurrency exchanges. I know there's been some company here in South Africa that's doing something with solar. They're called the Sun Exchange. Um, but I really don't think I've seen something that has really, really made me say, oh, wow, this is actually working. So we really need to get there. And I think another thing is that we lack developers, right? So Africa lacks
Absolutely.
developers. And if we're gonna create use cases, we need to have our own developers. Otherwise, importing talent becomes very, very expensive. So we're yet to see use cases.
I see. So I think the use cases predominantly were for crypto because of the remittance, which was being a biggest market in Africa,
Mhm, mhm.
and
Yeah,
some of the crypto startups coming up, and also asset digitization started picking up because of the gold. I
definitely.
wanted to ask you a question from a perspective of an advice. So let's take an example. Somebody is starting his journey in blockchain. There's always a
Mhm,
perspective, and there's always a notion that it's a technological revolution. I come from a non-tech background. So is this
uh-huh.
technology is for me, and how can I actually become a part of this? How can I leverage my understanding? So why don't you share some of the limelight on this?
Okay, so you're also speaking to somebody who doesn't come from a technology background, right? So it it just makes you realize that there's room for everyone. You know, this is an emerging technology. We're all still learning. We're all still making mistakes, and we're all still trying to figure it out. So there's room for everyone, whether you come in as somebody who just understands the theory of what blockchain is, and you can educate, or whether you come in as somebody who has knowledge, maybe you're a developer and you want to learn a different programming language. So there's room for everyone, basically. And we need a lot of evangelists at the moment. So you don't need to be a techie to be part of this revolution.
So what do you think? What should be exactly the pathway? So because if I got into this space in the early days of cryptos, and when I asked someone how should I actually leverage my understanding, I'm an engineer by chance. So people said you should first read the Bitcoin white paper, and then you should watch a documentary on Netflix,
Yeah,
and then you should attend a lot of meetups. So that was
yeah,
my journey. So do you have any pathway for somebody who is getting into this space and
yeah.
specifically focusing on the student perspective?
Um, I don't live by the rules, so I actually read the Bitcoin white paper during my DevCon scholarship program, but I was already part of this industry, right? Like I said,
Yes.
there are no rules for now. So what do you really want out of this? What really spikes your interest? The blockchain space is evolving every day. A lot of things are changing. So for me, it was the little impact that I needed to make, and it was more of a positive impact that drove me to this. So if you're going to get into the blockchain, what is it? Do you want to just make money out of it? Are you interested in cryptocurrencies? Who are you, right? You have to identify with the industry. I mean, not everybody can be a developer, not everybody can be a blockchain evangelist, not everybody can be a tutor, but you can be involved somewhere. But who do you want to be in the space? I think people should really try and identify who they want to be, then they can start to learn. So I don't think there's
Absolutely.
any, yeah, if there's any. And with meetups, I think it's good to socialize. I don't really attend a lot of conferences myself, and a lot of meetups, because I just found that I was just speaking to the converted, and It wasn't working for me. I'd rather speak to somebody out there who knows nothing about blockchain.
So I don't you think that somebody who have started reading about Bitcoin and blockchain usually
Uh-huh.
get this orthodox mentality that I mean I personally have started questioning
Uh-huh.
everything. If I pick up a fruit in a marketplace, I question, is it really organic? And if somebody gives me a transcript or possibly the education certificate, I usually ask them a question: is it really authentic or is it really original? So do you think that
Uh-huh.
somebody who start reading about Bitcoin and blockchain start having this perspective that I wanted to actually draw a thin line between authenticity and
Uh-huh.
the fakeness which is there in the market?
Yeah. Okay, so curiosity is actually important. And one thing that I've come to learn in life is that what you believe in will work for you, right? Some people really go into something for the mere fact of, I don't really want to get this. I want to question everything. Even if I see something positive, I'm not going to try and understand it because I don't want to understand it, right? So what mentality
Absolutely.
are you getting in with? If you get in with the mentality of saying, this looks interesting, let me see what positive I can derive out of this. I mean, there's no perfect system, but what is it? What can this be used for? People merely go into something to question its authenticity. So we need to really check what they're really getting into the space for.
Absolutely. I think the learning is a lifelong process. So
Yeah,
you need to draw a
exactly,
thin line and you need to always come up with
exactly.
objectified motive. You don't really have to look at from
Exactly.
perspective of comparisons. Like it's like
Mhm.
comparing oranges and apples. So Yaliwe, I just sharing my experience. So I've spoken possibly at 50 plus conferences in India and across the
Mhm.
globe, and I've taught 5,000 plus students and professionals. Wherever I go in conferences, I always see there is a women deficit is happening in
Mhm.
specifically in the emerging technology, and if we talk
Yeah.
about blockchain as a space, don't you think
Mhm.
that this is a huge gap? And how do you think that we can fill this gap? Because we see that gender ratio is getting screwed up in most of the conferences, and even in the
Mhm.
courses, you would find very couple of women or handful of them, and rest is the male audience.
Yeah. Okay, so I think I've seen a lot of change. I'm part of a lot of women's groups, especially blockchain women's group. I see women coming up and standing up. I think in the past it was more of women really lacked recognition at times for the efforts that they contributed to industry, right? And yes, there is a lack of women, but it's not so bad because I can see women coming up. It's more of telling them, you see, you can be part of this. You can do this because, technology is scary, to be honest. And every time somebody thinks of technology, especially women, you think of this complex, system of things that is not easy to understand. And, men are better at it. Like I said, I don't come from a tech background, but I was curious enough to get involved. So women need their own heroes. Women need to identify with other women who are doing something, because if I see somebody who looks just like me doing something, it makes me realize I can do that as well. So I think it's us who are already in the space who should be able to pull those women at the bottom and bring them up with us. So initially last year, I launched the African Women in Blockchain and AI initiative, which was a successful event, and that was to bring more women to the table and to tell them to say, you know what, we can be part of this revolution, because it's either we're in or we're left out. And I mean, what's happening now is a very good example, right? Technology is
Absolutely.
here to stay. We're all at home. I left my apartment. I love shoes. I left all my fancy shoes and all my clothes, and I came to stay here with my mom because I want to belong, but I'm able to interact and work because I'm part of this revolution and I'm part of technology. So this is where we start and say, you can be part of this. You can't just be cooking for 21 days locked in. You're gonna lose your mind. There's so much that you can
Absolutely.
do. I believe women need their own heroes. Yeah.
So you are saying that influencers should become the leaders, and then they should actually bring a lot of women and create that excitement and help decoding the
Yeah.
technology
Yes,
and
the right
actually.
influencers. The right influencers. Another thing I also say is that I love gender equality, right? I love the fact that women should get involved. But I think from my experience, we should also never forget the men who support us, to be honest, because I think I've got a
Absolutely.
lot of support from men. Um, than I've got from a lot of women in this industry. The women who know you exist, but they pretend you don't exist because women sometimes we compete. We
Agreed.
take everything as a competition. So it's very hard for women to bring other women on board because I want to be the star of the show. So I think the women should stand up and the men should continue supporting us to bring more women to the party.
Exactly. I think the competition should turn into a compliment, rather that all the women should start
Exactly.
complementing each other, and you should become the leaders in a space to actually bring change for the country and for the industry. So, what do you think that
Exactly.
how we can actually fill this gap? I understand there is a gap. So, how do you think that we can fill this gap collectively amongst the nations? And for somebody, let's take an example: somebody coming from the frontier market and they wanted to actually get into
Mhm.
this space. And what is this message for do you have for them? That how we can actually address this gap and
Okay, I think we should just open more avenues for education, to be honest, right? What I've come to realize in the blockchain space is that a lot of people are money hungry, and usually people are selling products that people don't even know they need. And people are getting into these things blindly. So we must create a lot of avenues and open a lot of avenues for education, whether it's just awareness. I'm not saying you go and give somebody a certificate or anything, just awareness avenues for people to know that they really need to be part of this revolution. And we should be open. I mean, we should, how would I put it? A lot of people in the blockchain space, because you have become known for doing something, should not become celebrities for nothing. You know, the people who can't even talk to other people. And I've come to realize that I treat every person that comes into my inbox. I have a theory that says every person is important unless they prove otherwise. So if you're going to talk to me, if I don't respond today, I'm going to respond. At least I'm not available. I could respond tomorrow or the other day, but at least I will have to respond to somebody because somebody just has a question, and you could actually be a person that brings them to
great.
this technology and to this change. Yeah, so we should be open to people.
So yeah, there should be more avenues and there should be more sort of collaboration platforms,
Yeah,
and you should give it an
yeah,
opportunity to
especially yeah,
them.
collaboration, especially. I think that's
So,
the right word.
Yaliwe, just a tricky question for you. If given the support of all the developers, if money is not a problem, if given a platform to develop, what is the one
Mhm.
use case would you like to work on, and you actually think that it has not been implemented or possibly has been implemented and there are a lot of loopholes?
Okay. I think okay. So speaking from an African perspective, right? I'm Zambian, but based in South Africa. I think one thing I've seen people working on it, right? But I think one thing to bring more women to the party, I think we need to create women-centered products, and that is at least wallets or for women-run households. I'll give you an example
Absolutely.
of South Africa. More women are holding the tent than the men are, right? And these women need support. So if they're given a cryptocurrency that can be usable, firstly, it's not accessibility. I've come to learn that we speak financial inclusion, we speak accessibility. People just don't need to access products. Are they able to use those products? So what are we offering them? So if we can have a wallet and they're able to use this, whether it's at a grocery store to get goods or to feed their families, I think we can do a lot of good, and we can see more people coming to the table than just speaking about the technology that people don't even understand.
So, I mean, the product should be focused majorly for women who are working in households. So, you're not really talked about the product, but I
Yeah,
got the gist of to bridge the gap, as in if they're holding the
to
funds.
bridge. I'm just going back to a question of bridging the gap. Bringing more
Okay.
women to the party.
All right. So, Yaliwe, we have a couple of questions from the community, and I will pass it
If they're
out
holding
to
if
Dirisha.
we give them,
Yes,
let's
sorry.
say
Go
we
ahead.
receive people.
No, please complete your answer. Please complete
Okay.
your answer.
Okay. I'm waiting for the question. All right. So what I'm trying to say is that from my understanding and from my experience, especially being in Africa and being in South Africa, if I have to create a product that would bring more people to the party and looking at women, I'd create a wallet for women that is usable, right? So it's usability. Are they able to convert that into actual products and actual goods that can feed their families and that can help them to enhance maybe their family's education? So we can look at a lot of systems. So we need to create usability, especially for blockchain-based products. I mean, there's a lot of exchanges. People know I can convert my Bitcoin to cash, and I can use cash. They're still using cash. What's dominant is cash, right? I need to exchange.
Absolutely.
I've got Bitcoin. I can't go there and use it. I need to exchange it for cash. So there's an exchange that allows me to do that. So what's the usability of this blockchain product?
But before moving to Divisha, I wanted to ask more about the identity. So, would you like to share some of the insights on how identity adoption or how identity is actually changing the dynamics of specifically this nation called Africa, and where do you see the use cases apart from the refugees which are already there?
Okay. So I think identity is a big issue, right? Um, well, right now in South Africa, I'd done that as a use case at some point, and more of an article of some sort, or yeah. So it's there's a lot of South Africa is huge, and it has a large community of immigrants, right? And sometimes these children, at some point, it wasn't easy for them to access birth certificates with actual ID numbers, being South African citizens. Right now, they can go and claim that citizenship after they turn 18, right? So one
I
thing, these
see.
children don't know where they belong. They're in
Hmm.
limbo, right? They cannot claim the identity of their motherland because they were not born there. And neither can they claim the identity of being a South African right now because they were not given that accessibility until they turn 18, right? So if we had a digital identity that the moment they're born, these kids can even have the choice to choose to say, because my mother and my father come from this land, I would like to identify as a Zambian, maybe by descent, but a South African by birth, right? So there's a lot of things that can be done to change that system. And also looking at the rural areas. So this is what happens. There's a lot of, like I said, the voting systems are crazy. If I'm a politician, what do? I go to the rural areas. There's a lot of people who have no identity. There's no authenticity. I don't even really know where these people are coming from because I want them to vote for me. I can create identities for a whole lot of people, right? But if we have this kind of identity system on the blockchain, there'll be no such things. And so there's a lot that can be done with identity, especially in Africa. And like I said, the systems are porous. My ID can easily be stolen. I come from Zambia. I mean, somebody can tear up my ID, put their own picture, laminate it back together, and there they are. I'll give you an incident. So what happened one time is I went to get a new ID, right? I went to Zambia. And because there was an error somewhere, one of the officials took a razor blade and tried to scrape off those details and retype with a typewriter
Sad.
and seal it back. I said, no, you can't do that. What if I get arrested? But it's my ID. So there's a lot that
Absolutely.
can be done in those lines.
So I usually share this that identity belongs to me, the validation belongs to the blockchain network, and you
Sure.
government in you institution, you only have to take the proof. So don't take my
Uh-huh.
identity. Let me control my data, and the blockchain has the validation, so it's immutable in nature.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
so you
But how
don't
can we
really have
control a
to.
forest like that, like the one that we have in Africa? You know, we can't.
Absolutely,
It's
it's
not
a
easy
major
to
problem.
control. It's a
Agreed. It's a
major
major
problem. Yeah.
problem. Data breach, identity getting stolen,
And
and
also another funny thing is that there've been incidences where people can take a dead person's identity and nobody's gonna know that person died.
absolutely, you don't really have the real time verifications.
Exactly. We don't have real time verification. Yeah.
Great. So thank you so much, Yaliwe. We have another woman in the party. She has recently joined us, Divisha, and we are
Oh.
proud of having her. So Divisha have some questions which this community which we are running. We have about 2,000 plus members in the community, and we are also coming up with women-specific courses in India and Southeast Asia. We would
Okay.
love to have you on board. So Divisha, I have some questions from the community. Over to you, Divisha.
Thanks, Aman. So, Yaliwe, There
Hi,
are a
Divisha.
few Hi. There are a few questions that I would like to put forth on behalf of the community. So,
Mhm,
my first question for you is, as a beginner in blockchain, which
mhm.
platform should someone begin with among Ethereum, Hyperledger, Blockstack, etc.?
I'm more familiar with Ethereum, so I'm not going to stand and start giving options and say start with this. So I'll say Ethereum because I think I'm more familiar with Ethereum.
Okay, thank you. How could we amplify the blockchain ecosystem in India and build a better community?
Okay. I think India is doing well, to be honest, right?
Okay,
From what I've seen, India has a lot of people doing amazing things, and you guys, I think you guys have the best developers so far. I'm not sure how inclusive it is to the people that are not so techy, though. So, if you can make it maybe more friendly to people who are not so much into tech so that everybody can be involved, everybody has a contribution to make. I don't know if that is already happening, so I can't say. But I think everybody has a contribution to make somehow. Yeah.
okay. And last question for you is, how do you think Zubi as an emerged tech community can help the people in Africa to grow and explore the new age technologies?
Okay, so I think firstly, I just heard, I think Aman mentioned you guys will be having women-centered like lessons, right?
Yes, yes.
You can open up your platform to people like maybe our communities. Now is the right time because a lot of things are being done online, right?
Okay.
Uh,
Hmm.
you can open up your platform to a lot of Africans to be part of it. We are already running an initiative that we call Train the Trainer.
Okay.
And so the classes are supposed to be on site and online, but now we're going more online because of the current pandemic, and we're having our first class on the 4th of April at 7 p.m. So our motto is to, well, initially it was 10 people a month, and these 10 people will go and educate 10 people each from their communities about blockchain technology, right? So
Okay.
that way we had a model of 100 people a month, and the
Oh,
main goal
that's
is to teach 1 million people in Africa. So I think we could really get help with mentorship, with people already doing things, with whatever Zubi is doing, classes. Maybe it's just a contribution to our train the trainer, whether it's contributing with tutors, because we're doing them online. It's webinars. We
okay.
might not always have the capacity to do that. So I think there's a lot that we can do, and there's a lot of room for discussion from, I think, from this moment on how we can help each other.
Okay. Thank you
Great.
so
That'll
much.
be. I'll actually
Yeah.
that'll be great. My apologies, Divisha. That'll be great collaboration, Yaliwe. I
Yeah,
think we should definitely get in touch with you after this interview.
definitely.
So, pleasure having you, Yaliwe. I think we have got a lot of insights to learn from you and the wonderful work which you're doing in Africa. God bless you and the superpower you have, and keep leveraging people with a lot of an understanding. And hope to see a lot of women coming out in this space.
And thank you so much for having me. All right.
Thank you, and be safe in this pandemic, and take care of yourself and family. And looking forward to meeting you soon in Africa. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, bye bye.